Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Basics. We're going to refine surface detail, improve fit through smarter assembly order, enhance the canopy, use layered paint techniques for scale depth, and apply a more professional decal and varnish workflow. If you'd like to jump to a particular technique such as canopy polishing, black basing, or decal finishing, take a look at the chapter timestamps in the description. We begin in the cockpit, where the kit provides raised instrument detail, but we are planning to use the supplied decals instead. Raised detail underneath decals tends to trap air and causes silvering. So the first advanced step is to remove the moulded detail on purpose. Using a curved blade and fine sanding sticks, the instrument panels are carefully shaved back until the surfaces are smooth and flat. The aim is not to dig into the plastic, but to create an even surface with a slight key for the decals to grip. A light coat of primer helps reveal any scratches that need further attention. The cockpit parts are then painted medium grey. Even if the plastic looks similar in colour, paint provides a consistent surface finish and helps the decals adhere more reliably. When applying the decals, a small amount of water or decal solution on the surface allows them to slide into place. They are positioned with a damp brush, and excess moisture is gently rolled away with a cotton bud. Once they have settled, a light sealing coat protects them before the control column and side details are added. The ejection seat is left out at this stage to prevent it being damaged during the heavy handling that comes later with masking and painting. Attention then turns to the intake trunking and nose gear bay, which sit between the fuselage halves with fairly vague location points. Gluing these parts solidly in place too early can create steps or misalignments when the fuselage is closed. Instead, the assembly is lightly tacked to one fuselage half and the other half is brought in dry. This allows the parts to find their natural position. Once everything is settled comfortably, glue is run along the seams to lock the alignment in place. Using the fuselage itself as a jig produces a much cleaner result. The Lightning is well known for being a tail sitter, and the suggested 20 grams of nose weight is not easy to fit in the available space. Thin sheets of lead or flattened fishing weights are far easier to work with than large chunks. These can be spread forward and low inside the nose and secured with epoxy or thick superglue. As seam lines are cleaned up, some of the surrounding detail inevitably disappears. Advanced modelling means putting that detail back. Gun ports and small vents are carefully drilled out using a pin vise, starting with a smaller bit than seems necessary and gently widening the opening. A touch of liquid cement around the edges softens the plastic and gives a more realistic, rounded look. Panel lines that have been sanded away are rescribed with a scriber guided by tape, using several light passes rather than one heavy cut. A gentle polish afterwards removes any raised edges. When attaching the wings, the mating surfaces are cleaned thoroughly so the join is as tight as possible. The wings are glued in stages, beginning at the leading edge root, and held firmly with tape or clamps while the glue cures. Any fine gaps along the wing roots are filled with superglue, which can be sanded smooth shortly after application. The canopy is one of the focal points of the model and benefits enormously from extra work. The clear parts are gently sanded with very fine abrasives to remove surface distortion, then polished through finer grades until clarity is restored. Polishing both inside and outside makes a noticeable difference. Once the windscreen is fitted, the front edge is blended into the fuselage so it looks integrated rather than simply placed on top. To enhance the realism of the nose section, a small area is skinned with metal foil to create a subtle shift in surface texture that paint alone cannot reproduce. This technique helps suggest the slightly different material finish often seen around the radome on the real aircraft. The tools used for this are simple but important. A smooth wooden sculpting tool, the kind often found in clay moulding sets, works particularly well because wood allows firm pressure without scratching the foil. The key is making sure the tool is very smooth so it does not mark the surface. The foil itself is a good quality kitchen foil from a supermarket. Thicker, better quality foil is much easier to handle, as cheaper varieties tend to tear too easily during burnishing. For adhesive, a dedicated metal foil adhesive is used. This is brushed directly onto the plastic surface rather than onto the foil, and once applied with a soft brush, the glue is dried with a hairdryer to speed things up. When fully dry, it behaves like a contact adhesive, ready to grab the foil as soon as it touches. In this case, the area being covered is fairly straightforward, with no complex compound curves, which makes the application easier. Fingers alone do not apply enough pressure to properly conform the foil to the surface detail, so firm, controlled pressure with the tool helps the foil pick up panel lines and edges underneath. Any excess adhesive or residue around the edges can be cleaned up with white spirit. White spirit is often the safer option around painted areas, as it is less likely to disturb surrounding paint or primer. Painting begins with a black base coat rather than a neutral primer. This black basing technique helps create depth and tonal variation. Masking is done with thin strips along the frame edges before the centres are filled in, which keeps the frame lines crisp and sharp. Lighter tones are mottled randomly within panels before the camouflage colours are applied in thin layers. The paint is built up slowly until the variation just shows through, which prevents the finish from looking flat. In the green areas, a tiny amount of yellow is mixed in and sprayed in selected spots. The camouflage pattern is masked using the flexible strips that allow smooth curves, and the masking is done in stages to preserve the tonal variation beneath. The silver undersides are sprayed over a smooth surface to keep the metallic finish clean and even. Light passes help avoid a grainy texture, and once dry, a gentle buff with a soft cloth enhances the metallic sheen. Keeping the metal areas glossier than the camouflage adds contrast and realism. Before decals are applied, the model is given a gloss coat, with a wide, soft brush. Long, even strokes and minimal reworking allows the surface tension to level the finish as it dries. This creates an excellent base for decals without the need for an airbrush. Decaling a jet like this involves many small stencils, so the work is done in sections rather than all at once. Each area is allowed to dry fully before the model is handled again. Gentle warmth helps the decals conform to surface detail, and setting solutions are used carefully to avoid disturbing them once they begin to settle. After all decals are in place, another gloss coat seals them before the final varnish. The undercarriage can be confusing due to unclear attachment points, so the main legs are installed first to establish the correct stance. The smaller struts are then added and adjusted as needed, using reference photos to confirm their angles. Symmetry is checked from the front to make sure the aircraft sits square and balanced. The exhausts are painted in dark metallic tones and then lightly dry brushed with brighter shades to bring out the detail. Subtle brown and blue tints suggest heat staining without overpowering the area. Weathering across the model is kept restrained with light panel line washes and minimal staining, so the finish remains believable at this scale. Fragile parts such as the pitot tube, missiles and aerials are left until the very end of the build. Slow setting glue gives time to align them properly without the stress. The ejection seat is finally installed and the canopy is positioned open to show off the cockpit work. This project shows how modern techniques, careful preparation and patience can lift a kit to a very high standard. Precision in the early stages pays off in a cleaner, more convincing result at the end. If you've enjoyed this deeper dive into advanced modelling techniques, give the video a like so we know to keep pushing builds further in this series. Subscribe so you don't miss the next Beyond the Basics episode, and leave a comment with the kit you would love to see tackled with pro level methods next. We'll see you on the bench for the next one.